I'm taking mercy on you guys with that theme playing for like the last 4 streams. But all right, everybody, we're streaming Day of the Dead, one of my favorite films. So we have the honor and pleasure of having on Jeffrey Reddick here, who is most notably known for just the Final Destination series. So we're going to get into that warped mind of where all that came from, and Tamara, Day of the Dead, 08, and just so much stuff. So let's bring on Jeffrey Reddick. How you
Hey,
doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. What do you think of the Silver Shamrock cover?
No, I was going to pretend that like my head was melting, but then I was
That's
like,
what a friend of mine said the other day. He's like, I'm like step off and
I was going to say I was going to pretend my face was melting. My face was melting, but then when you led that you had watched the Day of the Dead original, and then we were going to talk about the remake. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do something goofy at the beginning of this because we're going to have a great time talking about most of my movies.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I like to keep it as fun. I got no questions, Ed. I got no script. I'm all off the cuff wherever the conversation goes.
Me too.
I'm so familiar with the Final Destination series. It's a favorite series of mine that I grew up with and remember everyone coming out in the theater, and just I guess that's the best way to start, besides this interesting fact that I didn't know about you until I looked up a bit. You actually sent a prequel script at 14 years old to Bob Shea at New Line.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. I mean, I'm guessing you always wanted to be a writer in film
it was
way
funny,
from the
like,
beginning.
I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, up a holler, didn't know anything about the movie industry.
Yeah.
Dirt poor. I always say I was kind of coal miner's daughter, summed up my family really well. We were poor, but we had love. And I had a group of friends that we would just get together and watch horror movies all the time, like starting at like 13. And our parents didn't like it, but they knew at least we were always at each other's houses and we're staying out of trouble. So that was why
that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's why they let us do it.
My first horror movie was Halloween at 6 years old, on Halloween.
Oh,
so
wow.
There's going to be 30 years this Halloween now coming since I first saw my first horror film.
Oh, wow.
But my parents didn't care back then too. They used to bring us to Blockbuster and stuff, and just go rent whatever you want, or just run right to the horror section, and that's just how it always was. But that was go on. That was so interesting when I read that.
Yeah, no, and so I remember there was a double feature at a drive-in of Alone in the Dark and Nightmare on Elm Street. And I had no real expectations because we mostly watch slasher movies. And I didn't find out till later that there was a problem with the print of A Nightmare on Elm Street that went out. Like the processor had done something where it had washed the film out a little bit. So even on the TV, the trailers looked a little cheaper.
Yeah, the colors look washed out a bit.
Yeah, it looked a little cheap. And so I was like, I didn't, I was more excited about the slasher movie. And then I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and it just blew my friggin' 14-year-old mind away. It's still my favorite movie of all time, and I think it's influenced so many other films. And it's just, I just think it's just a masterpiece. And so I didn't know anything about the movie business. I always knew that I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. I grew up wanting to be an actor. I just went home and I banged up a prequel idea on my typewriter, and I called New York and I found out the name of the company and the president, and I mailed it to him, and he sent it back. He said, we don't take unsolicited material. And I didn't even know what that meant. So I just wrote him back. I sent it back to him, and I'm like, look, sir, I've spent like $3 on your stuff, so I think you can take 5 minutes to read my story. And and he read it, and he got back to me, and he was very kind. He's like, you've got a great imagination, but just study. And so he would send me scripts, and I stayed in touch with him and his assistant, Joy Mann, and I always have to give her. You'll hear me giving a lot of people credit because I just do, but Joy Mann.
I mean, speaking of Bob Shea, I mean, I had Jack Shoulder directed Alone in the Dark and Nightmare 2. I had him on very early on. One of my first 5 guests or something like that.
Oh,
amazing,
wow.
Man! Such a sweet guy.
Yeah,
that's a lot of wisdom too.
Yeah, he probably has more wisdom than I do. But
Hey,
but
you were that determined at 14,
well, I
man.
was
To find a
determined because
prequel
I didn't know
idea.
any better.
Yeah.
And so from age 14 to 19, I went to college in Kentucky. Him and his assistant Joy, they would send me scripts and tchotchkes from movies, and just very encouraging. And I would call Joy collect. Like I didn't know any better. I would call Joy
Yeah.
collect. When I was like 15 from my house, and she would take the charges. So it was really amazing. So I went to New York my sophomore year of college to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I got to meet Bob and Joy, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to intern here over the summer?" And I'm like, sure, that would be a dream. I'd love to.
Yeah. Right.
And so I ended up interning there. And also when I was there for the summer, I got an acting agent. And I was like, everything's going great. I'm just going to stay here, and the internship at Uline turned into like a paying internship, turned into a floater position where I would kind of fill in for all the executive assistants when they were out of town, it was only
you stayed at Uline for a long while.
Yeah, I was there 11 years. Like I sold the treatment for Final Destination, which was called Flight 180 at the time in 1997, and wrote the first draft of the script, and then sold the story for the second one in 2000, at the end of 2000 or in 2001. And I'm still working there because I'm like, I'm very much a creature of like habit and loyalty. Like I just love everybody at New Line. And finally, my boss was like, "Dude, we love you here, but you're a writer now. Like you need to leave the nest and you need to be a writer. Like, what are you doing here? We can't believe that you stayed this long."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, fine, I'll leave." And then I was in New York, but then I didn't live far from the World Trade Center. So after 9/11, I decided to finally make the move out to LA. And it was.
Where were you living in New York? Because I'm on Long Island. On Battery Park. Okay, I'm on Long Island, Suffolk County.
Yeah, I know. I love the accent, by the way.
I get that now and then.
It takes me back.
Especially when it really comes out. It's
So after I sold the story for the second one, and executive produced that one, I moved to Los Angeles to just be a writer full time.
Yeah. I mean, that's just amazing. That blows my mind. That 14 years old. Now, what was the prequel idea? Can you say? End up using that? End up getting used in any way?
I wish I would have kept it, but like when you're young, you're never.
I know. You don't think what's going to happen.
And it was on onion paper. The only thing I can remember is it would be what you would expect a 14-year-old to write a prequel about.
Okay.
Knowing what you know in Nightmare on Elm Street. So it was very much Freddy Krueger worked at the school and was kidnapping and killing kids, and the parents killed him, and then at the end he popped up in somebody's nightmare. So it was a very generic 14-year-old version of what.
Still, the imagination, and then again, just it might be maybe like you said, maybe naive determination, but still, it was there, and that passion was there. To actually do something about it, and after getting sending the letter back and stuff like, no, here it is again. And look, I mean, it opened up amazing doors for you.
It was interesting because I lived in New York and I wasn't in LA. I wasn't out in LA to like kind of, because looking back, I should have moved out to LA the minute I sold the treatment. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always like buzzy. So, I kind of had to come out and reintroduce myself to the town, because even though my name's on the credits, and I'll get into the specifics about the films,
absolutely,
and stuff later. But, people had never met me. So my agent was like, well, I kind of have to reintroduce you to everybody, send your original draft around, which was different than the shooting script, and just get you out there again. But it's just horror's in my blood. I mean, I dabble in a couple of cartoons during COVID, but everything else has been horror. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I was saying before we went live, and just I've seen you for years and years. It just pop up in all different places, horror stuff, documentaries, lists, countdowns, and stuff. And just I always said like this guy just lives and breathes horror too.
Yeah. They
But
just
we got
they know they can just call me up and they'll be like, yeah, we don't want to pay somebody for this documentary. Who can we get to talk about stuff for free?
That would be how I would be, honestly. They could do, I mean, basically, it's what it is on YouTube now. I get paid to talk horror. I'd do that heartbeat. I'd be like, you don't want to pay any money? I'll come and talk about it. It's just, it's never enough. It's always that patch. Same with music. It's just, it's what you live and breathe. But so I gotta know, where did this whole idea for Final Destination come from? Because a lot of people don't. I don't want to say a lot of people know, but there's a difference between story and screenplay or the script, and and director. So you wrote the story and came up with the entire premise of this series.
Yes, and there's always a journey. So the idea first came up to me. I was reading an article about a woman who was taking a flight home, and her mother called her the next day and said, "Don't take the flight you're on. I have a bad feeling about it." And so she changed flights, and the flight she was supposed to be on crashed. So that put the idea in my head, and I didn't have a story for it yet. But back in the early days of Hollywood, to get an agent, you had to write a spec script for something that was on TV, because they wanted to know that you could write other people's voices. So I love the X-Files. Love the X-Files. So I used that idea as a setup where Scully's brother, Charles, who's the one who hadn't been showcased a lot on the show, he had the premonition, got off the plane, and then the people started dying. And of course, everybody thought the brother was doing it and all this stuff. Yeah. But I didn't send it to the show. That's the only misconception that kind of floats around, is like it went to the show and then they passed.
Oh, okay. So you didn't send it to?
I didn't send it because one of my friends at New Line, Mark Kaufman, read it. I mean, I got an agent from it, which was great, but he's like, "This is a really good idea for a movie. So you should develop this as a movie." And I'd written several scripts that I submitted to New Line over the years, and some were good, some were almost got greenlit, but I knew, since I worked there, that they would see this as just Jeffrey pitching another employee pitching an idea.
Another horror movie.
Everybody that, no matter where, a lot of people would always work there because they wanted to be a filmmaker. So I decided that I needed some producers attached. So one of my friends, Chris Bender, who worked with me at New Line, had started working for Craig Perry and Warren Zeit, these two producers who had a deal at New Line. And they had just done they were finishing up American Pie.
And so this is like 99.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
99, 98, 99.
Yeah, probably. I think it was I sold it in 97. So it was 97. So yeah. I don't know where they were. I know they were working on American Pie, because I know they were like, you got to put this kid from American Pie, which was
Stifler, William Scott,
because he's going to be a star. You got to
Which actually, that brings up a question of when they were the time period of when you wrote this and stuff, because I remember TWA Flight 800.
Yeah.
Was that an influence on the story?
That was unfortunate. Okay. That was unfortunate time, because people don't know, like, the X-Files script that I wrote. And the funny thing, I had a copy of the script that I found, that I scanned, but I couldn't find the cover page. So I just put 95 on it. I just tried to extrapolate. But that happened years before. I think people make that connection because they used some of the footage from that crash for some of the news footage in the movie.
Yeah, on the news, right, when they show the debris in the water and stuff. Okay,
so I think that's where people got the idea that wasn't inspired by that. But no, that was the inspiration was this article in a paper I read. Yeah. And so what happened is in my X-Files script, there was no death. There was, you find out basically that
premonition, then
the premonition is there, but you find out basically death, because I love talking about evolutions of stuff. Death kind of got into this sheriff that they were who they were investigating with. We find out that he got shot the minute the plane went down, so death kind of went into him.
And almost like a vessel, like a death
using him as a
going into
vessel.
a new host or a vessel, yeah.
So when they shot the sheriff at the end, you saw this like just this shadowy kind of like almost like the little shadow you see in the movie in the Final Destination movie. You just saw this little shadowy thing rise up. So when we were developing it at New Line, the biggest issue they had was how do you do a movie without showing the killer? Like how can you not show it doesn't make any sense. Craig and I went back and forth with this Craig Perry, who's like I call him the godfather of the franchise. He's and certainly Warren was great as well, but Craig has been the one that's really shepherded the franchise over the decades and is just a wonderful producer. And we went back and forth, and so we finally decided that we would put like an angel of death in there that would kind of taunt the characters. And in my original version, I've talked about this before. In my original version, the story is the same. The setup is the same. The story plays out, with death coming after them. But in my version, death, it was very Nightmare on Elm Street influenced. So death played on all the survivors, their guilt and trauma.
Everything they went through from surviving that,
from surviving that, or like, in the finished film, there's a brother that stays on the plane and a brother that gets off. And in my script, it was a sister that stayed on the plane and a sister that got off. So the guilt that she felt. And so, and the asshole character, like the character archetypes are the same, but it was all the deaths were very Nightmare on Elm Street influenced.
That actually brings up reminds me of a question I've always thought and you said that you always watch slasher movies. Slashers were my favorite subgenre, still are. I always have been. Did you like kind of look and write this script at the beginning as like a slasher film, just without with death as the killer?
I mean,
you hear that thrown out every now and then in
the
horror world.
I feel like it almost is a slot. It because with that kind of setup, if you have something or someone stalking kids and killing them, it does kind of fall into this slasher,
especially in brutal ways and creative ways.
Yeah, it falls into that slasher kind of thing. So so we ended up we stuck an angel of death in there. I'm like, fine, whatever. And originally the characters are going to be adults that had no connection to each other.
No, so not
this was at the treatment phase, but then Scream came out, and God bless Scream because I love that movie. And then the studio's like, "Do you mind if we make them teenagers?" I'm like, "No, teenagers are fine." So I developed the script. They bought the treatment, had me write the first draft. So a lot of the key stuff is, from my script is still in there, like the deaths, killing them in the order they would have died, the death design thing. Like that was a big thing that Craig and I, because, Craig at one point was like, there needs to be some other element. So this doesn't feel like just we're having kids getting knocked off.
Yeah, and it has to have something more to it to differentiate and make it stand out. That makes sense.
And that's what I love about him is he always pushed me to think harder. And so it just hit me one night. It was like, what if death is killing them in the order that they would have died? And then that gives our hero a chance to maybe outwit and outsmart death, but then he forgets that somebody didn't change seats and it fucks things up. So
there's a lot of creative stuff in that in all of the movies, but in the first two, they're my favorite. And I mean, after that is when you moved to LA, right? After the second one.
Yeah.
And I still think they're fun going forward, but
I think they're really. I enjoy all of them, and
me too.
So that was the development phase of the project up until James Wong and Glenn Morgan came on. So obviously, their names were, floated around, and, I had a conversation with Bob because he asked me what I thought about them. I'm like, they're fucking awesome. Like, they've done some of my favorite episodes of the X-Files. And so basically they took, they wrote the final shooting script. And the biggest change they made, which I've always said, I think really helped open the franchise up beyond like my version, which I think would have been great for like hardcore horror fans. I mean, but death was driving them to commit suicides that made Alex look guilty because he kind of kept being there at the scene.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to figure it all out and understand what the hell's he's going through and stuff with the premise and surviving all that. You got enough on top of you. So then he's going around and he's getting in the wrong place at the death scenes every single time. I mean, I love that about that movie.
So James Wong and Glenn Morgan came on and did write, the completely, written by them script, but they came up with the Rube Goldberg idea, which I think was brilliant, and made it and opened up the franchise in a way. I've always said this to make it so, because I know so many horror fans that are non-horror fans that will watch Final Destination.
Oh yeah. It's definitely a different type of film, especially at the time.
Yeah,
like like you said, like Scream just came out, and sorry, I'm not a Scream fan. I don't like the whole series, but I respect it. I mean, it's a classic, the first one, but I don't like the rest of them and stuff. But it did like bring horror back at box office wise for sure.
Yeah, and it was a sleeper hit, and it was a sleeper hit, and because I know New Line is they were still worried a little bit. Because I worked the last 5 years I was there, I was in marketing and publicity. So I just knew they weren't spending as much money as I had thought they should on it, Okay. And again, when I say me, I'm talking about me as an employee now at New Line,
exactly.
Having, again, all credit to James and Glenn, for the script they wrote.
I mean, but I know what you're saying. It's like
your
story, you helped grow it and stuff, and then
like I have story credit and I have shared screenplay credit, not because I didn't pin the screenplay with them, but they used enough of my material. The guild has this very like very restrictive arbitration process where they literally count like a percentage of like, okay, if you have to have contributed like 50% original material to this, to get a screen
to get credit and stuff.
They're very judicious in how they hand out credits, but I give like again all credit to James and Glenn, especially for the Rube Goldberg stuff and what how they shot it, and I think they did a really good job of, again, opening it up to a wider audience than kind of my Nightmare on Elm Street version would have done. And if they hadn't come up with the Rube Goldberg,
I still would have loved to see that version.
You know what? I mean, it's still, the studio, again, they didn't have a problem with that. I just think, with James and Glenn coming at it from a different lens and really leaning into, because also the script that I had, we had to put that fucking angel of death in there before the studio would buy it. And he wasn't running around. He wasn't killing the kids themselves, but he was just kind of showing up and
like a presence that was
and
there.
taunting a little bit, and then they would go into these really weird Nightmare on Elm Street reality warping scenes, and then kill themselves, like jumping in front of a train and hanging themselves.
Well, you can see, you definitely still see shades of that in the films, all of them. I mean, especially like Todd's death, which is so, the way that was shot and written and all of that, that's a gut punch. That scene in the shower.
Actually, when people ask me like because it's funny because he died in my script, but it was different. Like because there were suicides. Like he calls his dad up. He's guilt. He feels guilty because he was a preacher's son and had been stealing money and selling drugs and stuff like this. So he calls his father up who's driving home and apologizing. and his dad doesn't know what's going on, but he's getting really frantic, and he drives home and he opens the garage, and then Todd's like strung a noose up with the garage, so his dad ends up hanging him. But but I think their version, I've always said, I know people like the bus smash scene that they did, which I think is great. It's a great
with what's the actress's name? I always forget.
Amanda
Blonde.
Yeah.
No one expected that coming.
No, that was
just drop fucking dead. She just walks up.
Yeah, that was brilliant. But I always say, like, when people ask me from the first movie what death bothers me the most, I always say it's Todd's, because they did such a good job, because it's grounded in reality, and
he's such a great character and a kind person and a great friend to Devin Sawa. Like, I forget his name. Alex, that's it. I don't know how I always like
Todd Danello, yeah. Not Todd Danello. Chad Danello. His character's Todd.
His character's Todd. But I agree. I mean, and that is such a hard scene to watch even today, because the way that it's so tight around his neck, and again, he's such a nice person. He already lost his brother and stuff on the plane, which you said earlier was a sister, if I recall right. On your like early version, like the sister was on the plane.
The sister got off the plane, and her sister stayed on, and
so that was like the Todd and brother equivalent, like what it started as.
With girl, but they had their own dynamic, because it was like the good sister, the one who was like made straight A's and stuff, died on the plane, and so the one that got off not only felt guilty, but she's like, my parents loved her more, and there's
in a way, like she was the better one, like why her, and that's good. I mean, I would like to see some of that, like in a different universe.
It's always interesting, because again, that's why I say it's scripts. A lot of time, like I just went and saw a friend's movie the other day, and it took them 10 years to make it, and it's just funny, because it's just always an evolution, and starting off from that,
it's always going to change a little, and
where it goes, and again, and I love. I love what they did with the film. I love, the Rube Goldberg stuff. Alex is, pretty much the Alex that I dreamed of in my draft. Devin Sawa is a good friend of mine.
So not many changes from your original vision for the main character of Alex.
No, he goes through the pretty much the same arc.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
Yeah. But the biggest, and the biggest difference was when you write a movie, they always go by this rule, like you have to explain everything, like, why this person, why now. And so they were like, well, we have to know why Alex had this premonition. Like, you can't just have a premonition.
Kind of like David Lynch being forced to reveal Laura Palmer's murder in Twin Peaks back in the day.
Yeah, because they go by these rules, and then when somebody breaks them, you try to break them again, and then you go back to the other thing. But so originally in the script, Alex, you find out basically it wasn't Alex's time to die. Like, he had the premonition to get him off the plane, but everybody else was supposed to die. So I just thought it was funny, like, because nobody cares. Nobody asks about the premonitions. It's like why they have them now. And it was funny because
it's all about this, like, the big focus as the series went on, of course, is just the kill scenes and the deaths. But
and James Wan too. Like, again, another thing they came up was cool was like, because I came up with they were dying in the order they would have died, and I had the scene where Alex forgot, like, oh, I didn't switch seats, with these characters, and so I fucked up the order. But they came up with the idea that if you intervened, it would skip you and keep going around the chain. So, like, again, they took stuff like to another level that I hadn't thought of. So, yeah.
I mean, that's just great when that's the great thing about collaborating with great minds that are alike. That you have your great idea here, then they're throwing in some great ideas that you wouldn't really have thought of and stuff, and then that's what all comes together to make a great film, and a great film that kicked off the series.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing, a comment in the chat here that I saw immediately: the log scene, the log
Oh,
truck from part two. I don't think anyone who is to have driven behind. I know I haven't. Ever
yeah.
since, never driven behind one. If I see one on the highway, I will fly past it on the next lane and be gone.
Well,
That is so effective.
this is another thing I love, because Kentucky is kind of behind the story of both of the inception of that idea and the opening for the story, because
Okay.
in my original treatment, they were going to spring break, and they stayed the night at a hotel, and there was a hotel fire, and Craig was just like, we got to come up with something better than a hotel fire. So I was going home to Kentucky to visit my family, and I got behind a log truck, and I pulled into the next lane, and then I pulled off the highway, and I called him up. I'm like, what about a log truck and the freeway, and Craig's like, that's the opening. So again,
So much
it's
better than a fire.
oh yeah, so much better. And it's just so funny that there's still that memes. Like, I literally will get a meme every other day, which
I can imagine. I can't imagine. I
I
can
love it.
imagine.
I love it. I love it.
That's
Just as a
too
horror
funny.
fan. But with that one, I wrote a treatment, and then these really great writers, Eric Bress and J. Mackie Gruber, who I'm really good friends with,
Okay. Nice.
wrote, a draft, and they kind of bought both of our drafts. And then Eric Bress and J. Mackie Gruber wrote the script for that one. And that's actually probably my favorite, because I think it leans more into the humor of it.
Two is my favorite, actually. Yeah,
and
very slightly above the original. I mean, they're very close.
Well, for me, and it's not even comparing them as which is better, but I know for me, like, the elements that I've always liked in sequels, I got to do with this one. Like, I wanted to set up that you think Kimberly and her friends in the car are going to be the leads,
Yeah.
and so then we get them out on the highway, and you think these teenagers are going to be the leads, and then I kill them all off, So that was fun.
Exactly. You don't expect that the first time, especially because then you're just stuck with Kimberly.
And then I wanted to bring in, I wanted to bring back the OG. I was going to bring back Alex and Clear. We couldn't get Devin. There were some contract issues, and there were some issues where they couldn't get Devin at the time, or timing issues.
I was going to ask that if there was a
so
that makes sense.
So he didn't come back, because originally, and that's why I killed Kimberly off, because I was going to have Alex survive the second movie. So if I'd have known we'd have not gotten Alex back, I probably wouldn't have killed Kimberly in my treatment. But what I thought Eric and Jay did for the second one was just, they brought a really fun sense of humor to it. It was still dark, but it was fun. It was kind of a roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of roller coaster, in the third movie we get into just the thing with the death scenes and all the whole series, what it really excels at, all those films, is how it really builds the tension and makes you look at a million different things in that location that person's in. Like a screw loose or the cord coming out and all of that. And it makes you really start guessing, all right, what's going to kill this person? And then usually it's the thing you would not expect at all. It's the smallest thing that was very subtly foreshadowed earlier on. And it's a great formula for this type of film.
And I think Craig, because I really haven't been involved after the second one, except just, obviously, I'm really close with the producer. So we certainly have talked ideas, and I knew how the last one was going to turn out. That was originally going to be the ending for part 4. I'm trying not to spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But part 4 is fucking awesome too. I love all of them. I know
think they're all great. It's a solid series.
It's a solid series throughout. I know 4 gets a little bit of flack.
That might be my least favorite, actually, is 4.
But
just again, by a tiny margin, just like 2 is a tiny bit above the original.
Yeah,
they're all very close.
And the thing that nobody knows about part 4 is they had to write that script before the writer strike was coming, so they didn't give Eric the time that he needed
to really flesh it out.
Get to yeah. I mean, and I still love the movie. Like, I still think it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, it's a great ride, like every other one.
I think the mistake they made, though, was calling it the Final Destination.
Yeah, I know, because then everyone's thinking that's it, and then you got Final Destination 5.
You think you think in horror movies, if like the final chapter, like a Friday the 13th, like they really chase them.
Final Friday.
So you think if it's going to be Final Destination, like, oh, we're going to get all these answers about like who Tony Todd is, and we're going to find out all this. Yeah. We're going to really find out what's going on, and then they didn't do that. So I think people got a little annoyed by that. It did really well at the box office.
It did. All of them did.
It did. Yeah, they've all done.
I could see 4 the ending like that, like if it did not giving any answers and stuff. But that's one thing. It depends on the movie and the series, if it's a series. But I love ambiguity. I don't like things being really explained, and it depends on the film. But in those type of movies, I don't really need much of an explanation. It's just death. You avoided death. Death's after you. It has a design, and that's it. Yeah. Like, so I mean, for me, it didn't really do anything impact me negatively. I didn't get any answers with the Final Destination. But I know we have a 6th one that's been in the works for a while. I don't know if you can say anything about it or not. If you can't, no problem.
No, I can.
I know we have that comment.
No, I just have to think for 1 second, because I can say stuff. I just have to always remember what's been made public.
Absolutely.
No, it's got a great team. It's got a great team behind it. John Watts, who did the Spider-Man Tom Holland series, wrote the story for that. Guy Busick and Laurie Evans. Oh my gosh, Laurie Evans Taylor or Steven. I'm embarrassed. I think I always
do the same thing all the time. It's so hard, man. Being a huge horror fan and film fan, and I keep all these names, directors, and stuff in your head.
But I know them
personally. Worked with them.
I love her work, and so I'm just embarrassed because it's one of when I get to the 3 named people, I blank on.
Yeah, I know exactly.
They wrote. They wrote the last 2 Scream movies, so they wrote the script for it. And
but the Radio Silence then. Or you mean the last 2 at that point?
At that point, yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant like the newest 2.
Oh no, I think the first
probably 2 and 3 or something like that.
Yeah. I don't. Or Radio Silence. No, Radio Silence directed those. I don't think they wrote those.
Okay.
But and then Adam Stein and Zach Lipinski. I know I'm probably saying his name. They did this.
After this, you're gonna be like, all right. Listen, just if you see a thing on JT's horror discussions, you see my name, and just don't stay away. Stay away from that.
No. I haven't had a chance to meet Zach in person. I've met Adam several times. And they're just great people, and they're very passionate about the project. And that's the thing, is like this movie is I'm super excited about it. It's not a reboot, like people are saying it's kind of a reboot, but I will say that it's a fresh angle on the film. It's still a Final Destination film, so don't go in expecting like a Rob Zombie version of Halloween.
Yeah, like a completely
it's nothing like that
type thing. Yeah,
it's still very much a Final Destination movie, but I think the way the story plays out and is connected, it's called Bloodlines for a reason, and it's got a very interesting thing in it, and most importantly, it's got Tony Todd in it.
I mean, he's just brilliant in everything, and we got to talk that. And how do you go about getting Tony Todd and involved with this whole franchise and stuff?
You know what? I wasn't involved in the casting of it. The studio handles all the casting. I do know, and this was from like a beginning point of view. I'm because none of this is, against anybody. It's just I had, from when I first developed it at New Line, like, even when I wrote my original draft, I was like, we just need, it's set in New York. We just need some diversity in the cast.
Yeah.
But this was like the 2000s, and diversity honestly just was not on anybody's radar. Like literally, I mean, I started off getting some work in New York, but my agent literally told me that, I was an ethnic Michael J. Fox type, which meant, that I was kind of like the nice,
I read that. It's on
and I was like, that's great. Everybody likes Michael J. Fox. And she's like, yeah, but they don't write roles for people like that. So she's like, if you could rap or play basketball or,
it's unfortunate.
Those were the times. So I was just very much pushing. And again, this was from the beginning of the treatment phase. So this was before any directors were brought on. I was just like, just make sure there's diversity since it's set in New York. And when they got around to casting, and Tony wasn't cast for diversity. He was cast because he's Tony fucking Todd and killed it.
That's what I always figured.
But I'm glad he's in there. So we had a little diversity in the first movie. But no, Tony Todd's like, since I saw Candyman and loved him in Night of the Living Dead, I loved him in everything. I mean, he's such a
everything.
I'm really good friends over the years
just
as well.
His voice alone, just his voice. I hear that man's voice anywhere. Like he could say anything, and so I would just feel so comforted, and I could fall asleep to him like reading anything. Like he just got one of those almost iconic voices.
Yeah, and he takes the work so seriously. Like I saw a one-man show that he did here about the first African American to win a welterweight championship. I'm not big on wrestling, so I might be on the belt. But he did a one-man show that was like 90 minutes of just him on stage. Wow. And this was like before COVID, but not long before COVID. And he killed it. Like just amazing. He's a classically trained actor, killed it. And I remember I went up to him after and I was like,
he's unbelievable. The devotion.
I was like, that was amazing. And he goes, I fucked up 2 lines. I was like, Tony, that's, I fucked up 2 lines. And like, nobody noticed. He's just, he's just, they always say never meet your heroes. Luckily, 99% of the people who were my heroes that I've met growing up have been amazing. So I'm very happy.
I mean, that's a common saying. Everybody I've met and had the pleasure of having on and stuff so far, and talking to all these people that made movies, involved with them, acted in them, wrote them, directed them, that I grew up with and adore. I mean, I haven't had a bad apple yet. I mean, everyone's been amazing. So I mean, but I mean, his Tony's devotion. I mean, just in Candyman, which is a favorite movie of mine, and the score by Philip Glass is one of the greatest film scores ever.
Oh
in my opinion. And
just the fact that the real bees and stuff, they have real bees in his
Virginia.
mouth. Like it takes, and Virginia Madsen too, yeah.
I know, Madsen.
It takes a lot to go there, and he had no issue.
Bernard Rose, great director. It's just such a beautiful movie, and so I was like over the moon when I found out that we got him, and I was really excited about Devin too, because he's he'd been in Casper, and he'd been in he's been in stuff that I'd seen that I really enjoyed. And Ali Larter was coming off Varsity Blues, and I knew Keir Smith from Dawson's Creek. Chad and Amanda Dittmer, like when I heard they were cast, like I wasn't as familiar with them, but I think everybody did such a great, Brendan Fraser was on Roswell. So I think everybody just nailed their roles. Like, once you watch a movie, you can't unsee or imagine anybody else playing the roles.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Nightmare on Elm Street, favorite movie of all time.
Yeah,
the remake. from 2010. What do you think of that remake?
You know what? I had the funniest reaction because you disappeared. So I don't know if I can. If I lost, or you lost me, or we're lost. Well, the clock's still ticking. So, what did I think about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake? I assumed that I was going to hate it so much going into it that my level of how much I was going to hate it. I don't know if you're still here. I don't know if I should log back in. Still.
Pat's already saying it there.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was like yakking. I think I've lost you, and I was like, well, I'll send a text.
Figures that I just watched Day of the Dead that I've seen 1,000,000 times in my life, and there's no connection issues. That one thing I'm dying to do is talk with you. That's too funny. But yeah, there's stuff that happens on StreamYard. It's disconnection issues. And stuff.
Yeah.
I don't see your picture though. I don't see your face.
Oh, you don't?
I just hear your voice. Let me take you out again and bring you back in. Nah, there's that face.
Okay, there we go. No, I was saying that you asked me what I thought about the Nightmare remake, and the thing is, I was expecting to hate it so much.
Yeah.
That I was surprised that I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. You know what I'm saying? Like,
just having that. I'm that way with The Thing. I mean, they did the prequel, but The Thing's my favorite film of all time.
Yeah.
And I mean, if they came out and said we're going to actually remake John Carpenter's version of The Thing, and say
they did remake
characters and stuff like that, but just doing, I don't know how I'd feel about that.
Oh, they remade it.
Yeah, what they did, like a full-on remake.
I thought it was a remake. Was that a prequel?
No, I mean, Carpenter's is the 2011 one. Yeah, that's a prequel.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was a remake. Okay.
Yeah.
But so I thought I was
worried about that one too when they announced it, but actually it's not that bad. The practical effects, they put a lot of CGI over the studio interference. I mean, that's the only thing really with it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that bothered me about that, with the Nightmare is I think they took like the classic scenes from the movie and then just did like weird shit, like the Freddy pressing down the wall. They just did a weird CGI thing with it.
Yeah.
I just feel like nobody could play Freddy but Robert Englund.
Yeah. But that's the hard part. But he's, I just read an interview recently where he's like, too old now. I'm kind of not. I can't keep playing Freddy. So
yeah. I mean,
it is hard. It is hard.
I mean, just the prosthetics alone, because I've heard so many stories of him on all the movies with just hours and hours of makeup and prosthetics put on just to get into Freddy, shoot all day, then he'd be tearing it off with the prosthetics at the end. People would be picking up like the pieces and stuff. Like, what piece do I have? His ears, like that's crazy. But I mean, you got to give it to him. I mean, it takes a lot to go into that heavy makeup and then prosthetics and stuff and all that every day, day in and day out shooting.
Yeah.
But so I had a question in mind. I just thought of it. What were you going to say? Maybe it'll jog my memory.
Oh no, I was going to say I saw somebody say that they had seen Tamara,
Tamara, early on, yes, from 2005.
Yeah,
I kept confusing it and thinking 2007 was Tamara and 2008 is Day of the Dead. But for some reason, I was thinking Tamara was 2007 until I looked it up again because I haven't seen it in a while. But I did enjoy it. How did that get started?
That was a fun movie because everybody was telling me to come up with something like another concept like Final Destination.
Yeah.
You know, and then I would come up with some stuff and they're like, oh, that's too close. And then I'd come up with something else. That's not close. And it was like driving me crazy. So I'm like, you know what?
If you don't,
yeah. So I'm like, I just need to write a movie for fun. And I love Carrie. You know, it's one of my favorites, you know, well, I have so many favorite Stephen Kings, but I love Carrie. I just hate that you have to wait till the end of the movie for her to like get back at everybody. So I was like, well, what if there was a movie about a girl getting bullied, and they don't realize she's into witchcraft and they kill her, and then she comes back and they can't go to the police and be like, hey, we killed her and buried her, and now she's
exactly.
So I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that movie. That movie, and again, I learned. I just always talk, you know, honestly about stuff. And that movie, like we originally set it up at Lionsgate, and it was going to be a theatrical release. We were really excited, but we had like 2 production companies involved that were financing it. And, you know, City Lights was very honorable and kind of, you know, kind of put all their money in and stuff like that. But the other production company just did not kind of stand up to their end of the deal. So we ended up having to shoot for a lot less than we had in the budget. And then they really skimped out on some of the really edgy stuff that the studio liked. Like, there's one scene in particular that, spoiler if you haven't watched the movie.
No, I've seen it. Yeah, I actually just watched it like 2 days ago to.
But there's this, you know, she comes back and she uses, you know, taking a little bit from Final Destination, she uses like each kid's like secret trauma or sin against them. And, you know, there's these 2 guys in the movie who have a history of like roofing girls and taking advantage of them. So in the script, she puts the guys under a spell, and she basically has the one guy rape the other guy as punishment. And so that's in the script. Lionsgate is like loving all this edgy stuff, and you know, the guy was getting what he deserved. But so they called me up the day before they're shooting. They're like, well, how much do you want us to show in this scene? I'm like, well, it's not a love scene. Like, it's a, you know, rape is about violence and control. So just show whatever you would show if it was a woman, you know, just show that. And then I saw what they filmed, because they wimped out at you know, it was a general onset wimping out about doing it. And so now it's like she puts them a spell and they start kissing each other. And then you see them under the covers later with their clothes on. And so everybody was like, oh, she turned them gay for raping women. And I'm like, so anyway, Lionsgate saw the film and they're like, this isn't the edgy movie we thought it was going to be. And Jeremy Half directed it great. You know, I love our cast. Jenna Dewan was great as Tamara. We had a great cast, but they just watered down the movie. And so then that one ended up going straight to video, but still after Final Destination, Tamara's like, is my favorite of the movies that I've had made.
It's a fun one, and it's still a very underrated, underseen movie. I mean, that's one that definitely, guys in the chat, if you haven't seen Tamara, definitely check it out. I know it's on Tubi.
Yeah, it's on Tubi now, and it's funny because a lot of people, when Jennifer's Body came out, people came out and said that I was reading. I don't know why I read comments online, but people are like, he ripped off Jennifer's Body. I'm like, that movie came out. Jennifer's Body came out like 3 years after mine. What are you talking about?
2009, 2008, something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I loved Tamara, working on Tamara, and I just wish we had had the budget and we'd kept the edgy stuff in, because I think that would have been a really strong franchise. Because I had some
ideas to go forward
for that one.
I would have. I mean, it's never, never say never. It's never too late.
Yeah,
you never know. Maybe one day you get back and do a sequel.
And then I see next on the list of my credits, Day of the Dead, 2008.
Yes, The remake of my 5th favorite movie ever made. My favorite Romero film, favorite of the Dead films.
I will say
how did that come about?
I will say it started out as a remake. How it came about is I got a call from a production company, but they already had the rights to the film. Steve Miner was attached to direct, which excited me because I've always loved
Steve Miner.
Yeah, it's Steve Miner. So I went and I pitched a couple of ideas, and one was very, very faithful to the original film. It's just set in modern times. Because that film was really kind of about, the military industrial complex and things like that. So, the pitch I had did involve like a viral outbreak in the town and the reservists coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of the movie took place in the bunker. Like that was my original pitch.
I mean, that's closer to Romero's original.
Yeah. But then as I started writing the script, I started getting calls. It's like, well, we need to change this. We want you to change this. There are too many zombies. We want you to change these characters. Like, because I did put some teens in the movie, but the whole idea was like, I wanted to start off again where you think it's going to be a teen movie, and then I killed off 2 of them. I kept 2 of them, and then Mina Savari and Nick Cannon, they were all supposed to be reservists, and not full on military.
There's a good cast in that movie. Nick Cannon, Annalyn McCord is excellent. Excision. Have you seen Excision from 2012?
Yeah.
That's such an underrated
and Michael Welch, who has been in a couple of my movies, and I adore him as well.
Ving Rhames too.
Ving Rhames, which was funny because they cast Ving, I think, to try to
connect it maybe
to the Zack Snyder. But
I can see it.
But it really, that was a hard thing to write, because I explained to them I'm like, look, it doesn't matter how we could write a brilliant remake, but fans are going to be pissed. And
I mean, that's the hard thing about doing a remake of a huge film like that.
And I'm like, and you're also making me take things further and further away. Everything that I'm doing that's connected to that film, you're making me pull out. So there was one point, where I got the old, well, if you don't want to do it, we can find another writer to do it. And I'm like, I'm not rich. I need to, and I signed a contract, and I've got to fulfill my contract. So we had a lot of, I got into a lot. That was the only time I've ever fought with the production, about stuff like the whole spider crawling up. I mean, the whole zombie crawling up above the ceiling and dropping down on that. That was just like, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like the very next scene, they're in an air vent and the zombies can't reach them, and you just showed a fucking zombie crawl up. Like what? Just crazy.
Yeah,
shit.
I forget what it is. I honestly, I saw it when it came out, and then I don't think I've seen it again, honestly.
And you know what? The thing is,
sorry, but it's just, I think it's a lot because it's Day of the Dead. The original is a favorite film of mine. If it was just a different zombie film and stuff like that, with like great ideas and stuff that I know.
Well, the funny thing is,
putting in with other people.
It is a. Oh, and we did have one rule, because they only had the rights to remake Day of the Dead, so they couldn't connect it to any of the other Romero movies. Like, so it couldn't reference anything in the other Romero movies. So that was a box that we were tied into, but I still was able to kind of follow the formula. But, I watch it today and I'm like, if it was just called anything else, it's a fun zombie movie.
That's what I was getting at. I was like, if you could throw it on, I'm sure I could throw it on again after all these years. And I find redeeming qualities in any type of movie, unless it's just like one of those in 10,000 movies that's just awful across the board.
Yeah.
But most of the times I always try to find silver linings, even if it's just that character did a good job, that actor did a good job, that character was funny, the effects are good, everything else isn't that great, and I can always bring some positives out. I hate going into a movie and then disliking everything about it.
Yeah.
So I know I can throw it on, especially with the cast. Like I said, I forgot a few that were in there. I know I could watch and have fun as just another zombie flick.
Yeah,
I think it was
just cover your eyes when the title comes up, and
exactly, yeah.
I
You just
see
skip
it.
past the title, just go like that, like you said, and then just let it play out after that. Because,
I see a
it
question.
could definitely be
Would I bring it the actors
Yeah, I was
back?
picking that one up. Yeah,
I'm assuming they're talking about Tamara.
Tamara. Yes.
I would love. Well, I would love to bring Tamara back. She couldn't. She's too old to play a high schooler, obviously. But the story that I had involved her mother and her coming back from the dead. So it was going to be Tamara going after Chloe while Tamara's mother was going after the teacher. So I think I have thought that somebody should cast Jenna Dewan and Jenny Ortega as sisters, because I think they look very much alike.
They do.
So if I were to, I mean, there's no way I could afford to get Jenny Ortega probably. But if I did like a Tamara movie, I would love to bring Jenna Dewan back playing Jenny Ortega's mother.
That would be really interesting and a cool way of bringing it back for a sequel and continuing the story. And it's amazing. I mean, Jenna Ortega, I love her. I think she's a great actress. Since I saw her on the second season of that Netflix series,
Yeah.
She was on that. And I said, and that was an early role for her. That was before all the feature films and Scream and all that, X. And I said, this girl's a good actress. And I said, I hope she gets good projects going forward. Then like a year or two later is when Ty West got her in X, which I think is a masterpiece. Then she got into the Scream movies, which is great for her. I thought she was some of the best things about those 5 and 6 movies. And she's been killing it lately. I mean, Beetlejuice. I mean, I can definitely see her playing the daughter and continuing that story.
Yeah, I think that'd be great to get. I can't believe nobody's thought to cast them yet. So somebody should cast them in a movie if I'm not going to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it working. There's a lot of places you can go with Tamara for doing a sequel. So I think that's an interesting one that you can really jump off and go back into with some unique ideas like that.
It's been so long. They would probably. The problem is I don't know. The rights are all mucked up. Like I don't even like.
I know that's what happens.
That's what's happened with that one. So I would probably, since it's such an older movie, I would probably have to. They would probably be like, well, we have to do a remake before we can do the.
Before to do a continuation, I mean that's sort of the days we're in. I mean, with some movies and stuff.
Nobody's gonna remember that one.
I mean, I do. I always remember the name. Then I remember because The Strangers came out 2008. Yeah, Strangers. Yeah. So when they say the famous line is Tamara home, I always thought of that name Tamara. It's not a common name, so I always thought of the movie, your movie Tamara that you wrote. So I every time I heard The Strangers, and then The Strangers Pray at Night, and now in chapter 1, because they keep using the same line of "Is Tamara home?" I think of that movie.
Yeah,
it's very underappreciated. It needs to get
that name comes up, and it's just a fun movie, and Jeremy Haft, our director, did a great job with having like the budget that we had, and the actors gave it their all. We shot in Winnipeg, and it wasn't winter, but it was, I forget exactly what the shoot date was, but it was cold. So there are scenes you can see where the actors' noses are kind of red, and a little bit of frost is coming out of their mouth. Like poor Jenna had to walk around in this tiny dress for like the last third of the movie, and she didn't complain once. Like she was such a treat.
It's gotta be great, right? When people like they'll do whatever they got to do, whatever to make it look, to bring the best performance, to make it look as authentic as possible. Because not everyone has that. I mean, there's like we were talking Tony Todd earlier. I mean, he's a legend, but that same type of thing, that devotion to the role and to the art form, and that.
And I always think
whatever I got to do, put real bees in my mouth, do it. And some people just do whatever they got to do, and you get some of the best performances out of that.
Yeah, and I always think it's and it's always a double-edged thing for me because, you know, I studied acting and that's, you know, something I've always wanted to do, but I'm also very protective of actors because I know they will, you know, they will do dangerous things on set, you know, I think Tony said I forgot how much he got paid for every time he got stung by a bee, but he
got paid by bee sting.
Yeah, he got for that scene. It was like every time I get stung, I get this amount of money.
I never knew
but
that.
I never want to put an actor in like a situation where they can be hurt. You know, I just remember now I'm going off a little bit, but I remember the first Borat movie where he was there's a scene where he's talking to the parents with these kids about auditioning, and then he's like, well, would you be okay if we did this with your kid? And they're like, yeah. And then it progressively he would get worse. Okay, what if they're carrying, you know, like wheelbarrows of, you know, dead bodies and putting him into and it's like, obviously there were probably a lot of parents that said no, but he just kept the ones that said yes. It's like, I just like, you know, it's like I never want to put my actors in a danger. I mean, God love Tom Cruise for doing his own stunts, man.
I mean, it takes you know, a certain type of person like yourself, and you know, to have that care about who you're working with and stuff, and also to be able to know individually who can do maybe more and more out there versus, you know, someone you may be more concerned about, you know, or I don't know how that works. I've never made a movie, but how it goes.
Yeah. No,
knowing the person, the actor, knowing like how they are, knowing if they might be able to pull stuff off like that on their own.
Yeah.
It's definitely something you got to keep in your mind as you got a million other things on your mind.
Yeah, and then sometimes, and this isn't always a problem, but you know, a lot of times you never, you know, I've been blessed to have, like, you know, really, like I said, pretty much everybody that I've worked with, I've gotten along with, like directors, actors, but you know, there have been some times on a set where it's like, okay, we had to let an actor go because they were being, you know, difficult, you know, a week into shooting. So it's that kind of stuff is never fun, but you know,
it's inevitable. You know, I mean, there's always those few not bad seeds, but you know what I mean. Like there's always
but sometimes people are going through stuff, you know, like
exactly, of course,
you know, and you never know what's going on behind the scenes. But you know, like we shot a film, and a week into it, we had to like replace our lead, and it was like, it's best for the movie, but it's going to cost us more, and we don't.
I mean, you know, especially so close to. I mean, you shot so much, probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so from Day of the Dead in 2008, there was a little bit of a gap, right? Like to your next project. What was the next thing you did after that?
Yeah. Oh, there were. I sold a lot of stuff. It's just it never. It's a lot of it got put into turnaround. Like a lot of times, you'll sell something to a studio, and then, you know, like I wrote this French horror movie that I was in love with for this company, Media, that wanted to get into horror, and so I got to write this script. I was like super pumped. It was set in France, great script, and then another company bought them, and they're like, we don't want to do horror. So then that movie gets put on a shelf, you know, and now if somebody wants to get it, they have to pay a lot of money because they add on the writing cost plus interest. I don't know what the interest is. But you know,
probably just make
I've had that happen to a lot of projects where, you know,
it's got to be frustrating.
It is frustrating.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And you know, and then a couple of them we finally got pulled, you know, we got out, like Dead Awake was one that we finally got out of turnaround after a couple of, you know, years of wrangling and stuff. But you know,
that's the movie I was thinking of. That's when you directed.
No. That Philip Guzman directed that. He's a really good friend of mine, good director down in Dallas. Yeah, I directed. It was funny because I directed a movie called Don't Look Back, and that was another situation where we had a studio. This happens a lot in my life. I don't know if I'm cursed for traumatizing people about log trucks. I don't know.
That might be what it is, honestly.
That might be what it is. But that was a movie we had set up at a studio, and we went down and we location scouted in Baton Rouge, and we picked all the locations. We had Virginia Madsen, we had Crystal Reed, who at the time was on not Vampire Diaries, but
great show, actually. That's one of the few things Williamson created that
I'm just blanking on the show she was on, but she was great, phenomenal actress. You know, so we were already putting cast together. We location scouted. Literally, we come back on a Friday from location scouting, and they called us on Monday, and they said, we decided we don't want to do, because they had done mostly commercials. We decided we don't want to do a horror film. So here's another project where it's like, okay, we were gonna have $7 million. We were gonna have $7 million to do it.
Yep.
And I cleared my schedule. I turned down a lot of writing work because we were ready to go. So we ended up shooting it for like under $1 million, you know, because we didn't. Because we'd already done the location scouting and stuff. So it was my first time directing. It was a great learning experience. It was an interesting concept because it's about these people who see somebody getting assaulted and don't help, and somebody like videotapes it, and the witnesses get outed. And in my original version, this was something that was deemed a little too close to Final Destination, but karma was going to come after them. So for whatever reason they didn't help, would come back on them like threefold. So I ended up working with the producer, and the producer was like, well, why don't you make it where we don't know if it's a killer or supernatural until the end? And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. So I wrote that script, and you know, and I think you can maybe pull that off if you have a huge cast. But the big mistake that I realized is I couldn't show the killings because a killer,
you have the cast that you have, you can't show, so it'll show.
You can't show the actual killing,
or it'll show a force or.
So you know, I'm happy, especially considering our budget constraints. I'm happy with the film and the cast, but it does have that kind of fatal thing where I'm like, I didn't think about it beforehand, but since I can't show any of the killings, people are going to be like, what the fuck, the Final Destination guy, he should know. We come to see these things for the kills, and we're not seeing any of the kills. We're just seeing the aftermath. And I was like, so lesson learned on let me just stick to my killing people like I enjoy.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it's writing is your biggest passion, right? I mean, directing. I'm sure you tried the directing with that one movie. Did you direct anything else? And like, do you have directing that you like that compared?
Yeah, you know what? I directed a short called Good Samaritan that was based off a character in the feature that went the supernatural route, and I had a blast on that one just because I didn't have any, I didn't have anybody to answer to. I got to do what I wanted to do, and I had got Toby Hemingway from the Covenant was in it, and Rainn Wilson was in it, and I got a little cameo. You're probably too young to appreciate this, but did you ever see the original V miniseries?
No, but I do know that it's a favorite of yours.
Yeah, it's a favorite of a lot of people my age. Yeah. But there was an actress, Jane Badler, who
I've heard of it though. I've heard of it. Yeah. I never went back and watched it.
It was groundbreaking at the time. And there's an actress, Jane Badler, who's a phenomenal actress, but she plays like the lead villainess in the movie. And I was just like, I want her for like just a cameo in the short, the Good Samaritan short. And I found her contact information, and I reached out to her, and she lives in Australia. And she did I had a little little crew out there, camera crew, just shoot her saying one line. And she was so gracious. She did it like, I mean, I thought she would maybe give me like 5 takes, and she literally sent me like 30 takes in different locations. I'm like, oh my God, it was just very gracious of her to do that. And then I got to meet her. You know, she came out to California, and so we've gotten to know each other. But
I mean,
so
and it gives you so much more options, you know,
yeah.
to choose from. Most people, I assume, you know, don't go that far and get that many takes like that.
Yeah. And so she, you know, so the Good Samaritan short, which is online, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of Don't Look Back for different reasons. Again, you know, it takes a village to make a movie. So I had a lot of people working really hard to like make something you know, something kind of special on a limited budget. So people told me, like, after you direct your first film, you're either going to never want to direct again, or you're going to want to direct again. And so I definitely am not in the never want to direct again category. It's just, I know when I direct my next thing, I just want to make sure I have the budget to do it.
Okay.
You know,
I mean, I've heard that from a few people, even people I got friendly with, first time filmmakers and footage and indie filmmakers and stuff. I said they finished the movie, send me like a screener of it, watch it, spoken about it. What do you think? You thinking of doing another movie if it's the first one? I don't know, because I've heard that if you do it, you're going to be broke at the end of the first one, but then you're going to want to do it again. So I've heard that definitely from multiple people, actually.
Yeah.
I guess it's just you got to know how much passion you are, you know, directing, you know, and what you.
Yeah, I've moved more. I mean, I'm still writing. I've got a couple of things that are floating around now. We'll see. You know,
that's what I knew. Coming projects.
Yeah, like we have one that was announced in the trades. It's a Bloody Mary movie that I'm excited about. But we're still in the beginning phases of putting all of that together, like, you know, the cast and stuff. And then I have a couple other scripts that I just finished that I'm really excited about. So there was a lull where I was getting a little burnout. I mean, you know, COVID definitely, and the strike were very, you know, spirit crushing for everybody. But I got very lucky because I did get to write on 2 animated Netflix shows.
Which ones?
One was called A Tale Dark and Grim. It's a one season,
that name.
Full story. Yeah, it actually got nominated for a kids Emmy.
Wow.
A kids animated Emmy, and it's funny because Netflix didn't even put it up for consideration because they have their big animated shows. So the production company submitted it to the Academy, and we got nominated. We didn't win, but honestly, it is an honor to be nominated. And then the second show was a show called the Usagi. Oh, good Lord, Jeffrey. Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Chronicles. So it's
you better. I would never remember that name.
No, because it's a spin-off of the Usagi Yojimbo manga. It's not a.
I see. I never got big into manga.
Yeah. So that was really fun because I got to work, you know, stretch a different part of my brain, like, and write more in like kid comedy space. So yeah, I'm also reading the questions. Yeah, what was my inspiration getting to the movie business?
Yeah, Nan, he did talk about it earlier, but
yeah,
I want to be respectful of your time.
It was the general thing, and this is going to sound hokey as hell, but I knew from a young age that I was going to do, like, I had a neighbor tell me that she asked me when I was 5 years old what I was going to do when I grew up, and I said I'm going to be a movie star. Now, obviously, I'm not a movie star, but I just knew from a young age that I wanted to work in movies. Like, you know, it's, you know, when you kind of live out in a small town and, you know, you just see this magical world, you know, of television where there's so many different things that, you know, stories you can tell and things you can do. Like, it's just something that's been in my blood since I was a kid. Like, I don't, you know, that's what gets me through, like, the when there are ups and downs. It's like there's no, I never had a plan B.
Alternative, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I never had a plan. Like, I told my mom I was majoring in science in college, even though I was majoring in theater.
Yeah.
You know, I had there was no plan B for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been able to, you know, at least work consistently. You know, and again, I have new projects I'm excited about. I'm still trying to get a couple of these old projects out of turnaround so that we can get them made. But
like the ones you were saying, like scripts that got sent in and then they hold on to it, whatever, until you get
yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely doing what I can, but you know, the business is changing every day, and companies are laying people off and merging, and so it's like it's a kind of a rat race, like where you're trying to be like, can you please give us this turnaround deal before you merge? Because once you merge, we're done.
Imagine that, especially with the strike and everything after all that. Crazy.
And the strike, you know, the frustrating thing about the strike is because what the studios usually do is, you know, it's the divide and conquer thing. So they'll do the directors first because the stuff that the directors are worried about don't affect writers. Then they usually do the actors second, because a lot of the stuff that writers worry about don't affect actors, and they do writers last. And then we get stuck with like nothing.
Yeah.
And the biggest, you know, fight was basically, you know, it took us years to get residuals, you know, for cable stuff. And then once they started these streaming networks, they started saying, well, we don't know how to calculate our profit, so we don't know how to pay you, you know, streaming residuals.
Yeah,
and
they haven't figured out.
And they know how much profit they're making. So
of course, you run a business, a company, stuff. They always know the profit they're making.
Yeah, and so they dragged the writer's strike out. I don't think they expected the actors to support us as much as they did. You know, thank God for that. You know, because the directors took a deal.
You guys were all together.
Oh yeah. Except for the Directors Guild. The Directors Guild took a deal like that. But the actors and the Teamsters, they all stepped up, and everybody was so supportive. And you know, they were doing really bad PR on the studio side, because they were basically saying, well, you know, we're going to starve these guys out. They'll stop eventually. Like, literally saying this to the press. And so they finally, you know, gave into our very reasonable demands. But in the meantime, they certainly made a lot of people suffer, you know.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's all we heard about, like, and the horror fans, movie fans, and stuff. Like, during it was all going on, it's like, man, when is this going to end? And like, so all these great people can get back to work and start.
And it affects so many people. You know, it affects, like, even there's so many people, like, that it takes so many people to make a movie like that. It, you know, a strike doesn't just hurt the actors or the writers or the director.
Yeah,
it hurts like
the whole thing.
All the crew people, all the post-production people. You know, it hurts so many people, and it was just very unnecessary. Very unnecessary.
And it went on for much longer than it should.
Yeah, and then and they did that on purpose, because I think they thought the actors were gonna. They thought the actors were like, you know, the stuff that they're, because the residual stuff did affect both things for the streaming thing, so there was crossover there, but I think they would have stuck with us anyway. But it just showed and now, you know, everybody's supporting IATSE, like, because again, it's hard enough to make a living in this business. Like, if I sell a script, like, none of that goes to like any kind of health fund. Like, the Writers Guild has a health fund, but I only get money put towards my health insurance if I'm hired to write something for somebody. So if I get hired to write, then I'm an employee. So then they put money into my health fund, and then I get insurance. If I don't, then I have to just pay for insurance, which is as we all know, is very expensive. Especially if you sell a script for over a certain amount of money, then the Affordable Care Act helps you some, but it's meant to help people. It's meant to help people who don't have a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, you cut out a little bit, and sorry guys if there's been like a little bit of
eye
connection.
The health insurance thing is very, if you sell a script, you don't get it. You only get health.
There's so many different things you gotta look out for, different ways that they can try and get around things, and it just has to be a real hard period going through all that.
Yeah.
But at least you all got to go through it together, united, all the writers, all the actors, and stuff like that. I mean, you were all real united on that, and probably if it wasn't for that, it probably wouldn't have went on for even longer.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think they let it go on as long as they could until they started. I mean, there was a point where they're like, we have enough reserved to get us through this period, but if we let this go on any longer, then the studios and the streamers were going to be screwed over. So they let it go on as long as they could until they realized, okay, now that's why we have like such weird TV scheduling right now. Like shows will be like, oh, we're going to show you 4 parts now, and then the next 4 parts.
I know. They have it down to a science too, though. Like just how they know how people look forward to things. You wait in front. Oh, you got these 4 episodes. You'll get the other ones soon. Don't worry, and stuff. And then it builds the hype up. But like I said, I don't want to be too. I want to be respectful of your time. I don't want to take it for too long. But this has been a blast, man. Sorry for the little connection issues here and there.
Oh, you don't have to apologize. You should see me hanging up on people all the time.
What it is everybody on YouTube uses StreamYard, and so it's probably it's like 6:30 my time, 3:30. So it's probably peak time that everybody's streaming right now.
Right,
and that cuts out and stuff. But you're on the other side of the country, so
it's only 3:30 here. So haha. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know, right? So you got 3 extra hours. I'm at 6:30 already. But I can't thank you enough, man. This is so great talking with you. And
no, you too. Anytime. And last thing on Final Destination, but it is going to be. They shot it in IMAX, and it will.
I heard that. Cool.
It will be coming out next year. Hopefully summer, but maybe sooner.
Okay, great.
So,
is it coming? Is it coming to? You said it's coming to IMAX, but then is it going? It's still going to Max afterwards, like for streaming. I remember Max was being.
I think Warner Brothers is. Yeah, it'll end up on Max.
Okay.
For streaming. When I said they shot it on IMAX, I mean they shot it like for the huge IMAX screens.
Yeah.
This time. And
how much those are for a ticket to IMAX here in Long Island? It's like
how much?
$40 or something like that, $40 maybe. And that's like I haven't been to a theater, an IMAX theater, in a year, so it could be even more than that. But like,
do you have like AMC subs? Do you have AMC?
Yeah, we do have AMC. They're very spread out.
Oh, okay.
There's not a lot of them. There's a lot of Regal cinemas.
Oh, okay.
And they're the ones with the huge IMAXs and stuff like that. They have them at the other ones, but AMC is cheaper though than AMC theater.
I was gonna say the AMC's because if you get their subscription, you can go see I think as many movies as you want, and you can see them in IMAX or regular.
Actually, a friend was telling me about that. He has a channel too.
It's
telling me he has this package. He lives in Arizona that he can get like exactly what you were saying. I'm like, I don't know anything about that in New York and Long Island. Like, I'd love to hear that deal. Yeah, I got to check into that.
But
it'd be great to see definitely see that movie on IMAX for sure. But all right, cool. Like I said, don't want to take up too much of your time. Thanks
absolutely.
for coming on. Yeah. Man. It's been great. Everyone in the chat, thank you for hanging out and asking questions. Everyone in the future watches this. Thanks for watching. This has been the great Jeffrey Reddick. And man, if you ever want to come on sometime again.
Oh, yeah, I will hopefully have new things to talk about.
That's the best thing is when we got new
in the
projects.
near future. So yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Just stay on for a sec as I end this. I'll thank you again.